Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for what you can do. It's your old pal Jake, and this is a week of high highs and low lows. Man. We got Tennessee members of the state house ejected for no damn reason. No, I take that back. They were ejected because they were trying to do something to save children and for daring to try to protect children from school shootings. They were ejected by Republicans. From time to time, we have Republicans poke into this stream. If you want to know what exactly my beef is with the Republican Party, this is it. And if you can look at this and still support Republicans, you should feel bad. You should be ashamed. You support a shameful party. You should be ashamed of yourself. We also have Republican appointed Justice Clarence Thomas taking bribes. Millions and millions of dollars in bribes from a right-wing nut job. Again, if you still vote Republican, if you still even consider voting Republican, you should be ashamed. Because this has always been the case. What's happening in Tennessee was always their stated fascist intention. What's happening with Clarence Thomas is no different than the bribes we've seen Republicans giving and taking throughout their existence. We are only getting more and more blatant examples of this. But if you support this, if you have supported this historically and you continue to support it now when what they are doing is obvious, you should feel ashamed. And then finally, going back to our high highs to counteract these low lows. My God, network media is catching up to the rest of us in terms of the general sentiment towards whether or not Republicans should also be subject to the law. One would have thought we would have all started on the same page there, but no. Just now, rich people are catching up. So, neato. We're going to go into all of that. How y'all doing today? I hope you're doing well. If you haven't already liked the stream, let me tell you, I feel like you could hit the like button confidently knowing you won't be a liar, because it's going to be a good one. Let's jump directly into it. So there was recently a protest in the Tennessee House, which some state lawmakers were involved in. It was a peaceful sit-in. They literally sat on the ground and sang, "We shall overcome." For that horrific offense, because the thing they were protesting was the lack of action by the legislature to do anything about gun violence after yet another group of school children were massacred. For that grave offense, those lawmakers were arrested. And now, the cowards at the Tennessee State House, well, in Tennessee's Congress, they're expelling them. Getting rid of these lawmakers, because in Tennessee, Republicans have a supermajority. Tennessee, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed for allowing this to happen. Even if you're a lefty in Tennessee, carry a little bit of guilt on your shoulder for losing this fight, because your loss is going to get children killed. It sucks to hear. I know. And if you fought against this, pat yourself on the back as well. And in 2024, your old pal Jake's going to be helping you. There's the upside. But you should still take a moment and allow yourself to feel shame for your state conducting itself in this way. Look at CNN's coverage. Well, that isn't it. Try it again.
In the Tennessee State House, they have just voted to expel State Representative Justin Jones. This is because of a disorderly protest that he and two other Democratic colleagues held last week in the wake of the shootings in Memphis, Tennessee. 6 people died. There were a lot of people who were very angry about those 6 murders. They converged on the Capitol. 3 of those state representatives, 3 Democrats, Justin Jones, Justin Pearson, and Gloria Johnson, were disruptive on the floor of the State House. One of the 3 has now been expelled from the State House, and the votes on the other 2 will happen imminently. Let's go to Ryan Young. Ryan, they did it. I have to say, it seems like a rather harsh punishment for being unruly on the floor of the State House. But when you have a supermajority, your party can do whatever it wants.
Absolutely, Jake. I'm not surprised by this. Based
Hold on. I do want to be absolutely clear about what they're talking about. Unruly on the floor of the State House. That's referring to a protest over the legislature's lack of action around gun violence, specifically doing nothing while school children are massacred. This is the world we live in right now. This is the America we have, and we have allowed to exist. The whole country should feel ashamed. It's hard for me to come up here, get on camera, and say into a microphone, I am an American, because I bear some responsibility for this as well. We all do if we are from the United States. If you're not from the United States, I'm sorry, but this is us. We are this low. If you ever admired the United States, I'm sorry. Clearly, we aren't what you thought we were. We're working on it. Now let's handle this. If you are from Tennessee, make it clear to God and everyone else what is going on and why. Tell your friends, tell your family. Have arguments over this. Break friendships over this. I don't give a damn. Don't allow this to stand. If you're from anywhere else in the world, let's start with this United States, which needs the quickest work before we do anything else. If you are from anywhere else in the United States, point to this. Don't let this go by without everyone who votes for Republicans knowing exactly what's happening. School shootings are a problem in America. We can't stop our children from being massacred in their classrooms. If you're a Democrat, then as a sacrifice to being polite to Republicans, I mean, if you're a traditional old school Democrat, as a sacrifice necessary to be polite to Republicans, we allow school children to die. So you do bear that responsibility. If you are a Republican, you are supporting the side that promotes the death of school children and actively fights and even corrupts our system of democracy in order to ensure that school children will keep being murdered. That's what you support. I recommend you just bow out from ever voting ever again. If you're a Republican who voted as late as 2020 for Republicans, just don't vote. You can't be trusted. There should be no law that prevents you from voting. Just your own shame and your knowledge that you don't know enough about the world to vote responsibly. And you should politely bow out from the democratic process because your opinion isn't worth being part of the conversation. And you should acknowledge that. Do the one responsible thing in your goddamn life and not participate. Let your betters decide what should happen, in other words. Because your betters are people that give a damn about children. The rest of us, what we can do is shine a light on this and show it to everyone who is physically able to see and listen. I don't care if they feel like having the conversation. Let's keep it going. Let's see what these baby murderers did.
Upon what Democrats have been telling us all day long, they believe this vote would happen. In fact, we've learned there are plans for all three members to walk outside and do a news conference after they're expelled. We do believe Justin Jones will also be escorted from inside the chambers after this procedure happens. There's hope that he's allowed to go to his office to clear it out himself. But there's also a belief that he may be walked directly out and not even get a chance to pack up his own items. This is shocking to so many people because obviously the focus now, especially a lot of the media focus, is on this going on and not the 6 lives that were lost just last week, and even the heroic officers who went in to neutralize the threat. So now you can hear those protesters screaming in the background.
Yeah, I'm real sick of the media trying to get credit for being, I don't know, super just by taking shots at the media. I'm sick of that. Yeah, there's fair critiques to be made of the media. This guy pausing this conversation to talk about how the media is covering this and they weren't covering the deaths of school children earlier. First of all, yes, they were. Second of all, it misses the point. How often do we see this story? Did we need it to be worse than Uvalde, where cops just waited outside while children bled out? Did we need it to be worse than that to learn our lesson? What was new about this? Not a damn thing. Except here we see the cause of the problem, and CNN is taking time to whine about it. So I'll whine about CNN. Why not? Because I'd like you to understand how effed up that is. I'd like you to know who's telling you the news here. This is the problem, what we're seeing right now. Republicans are playing games. The Tennessee legislature right now is playing games instead of addressing the problem. In fact, it's even worse than that. They're degrading democracy because of one member's completely fair, totally understandable, in fact, commendable use of free speech. Because of that, for sitting on the ground and singing a song in a classic protest that is badly needed, that every one of our leaders should do. Everyone should do. In fact, write your leader. Let's start this. I have a what you can do. I'm changing it. Write your leader and say you want them to protest in the exact same way these three did. Let's have this in every state house around the country. Every single one. Problem is the Republicans doing everything in their power to ensure that children keep dying. That's the problem. This report and others like it is focusing on the cause of the problem. And any smarmy prick that tries to say, oh, you want to show this, but not the story about the school children dying, has no understanding of what is going on. And you shouldn't ignore them necessarily, but you should be aware that they have no understanding of what is going on, of what any of the context of this is. And they're just wasting their breath. So I guess use their camera feed and ignore their dumbasses.
Thought this would happen. We're also told more people might be swelling into the area because they want to participate in the rally that's going to be held here after all these proceedings are done. But Jake, this is quite a shock when you think about the fact that no one has ever been expelled for a procedural matter. This comes down to decorum, and the decorum wasn't followed, giving the Republicans a chance to pull this off. And like you've noted earlier, these members will have a chance to run for their seat again. So we might be back in the same situation with these same members back here in a few months after they probably will get expelled today.
So there was a motion to adjourn, but that has been defeated, and they are now the Tennessee State House after expelling Representative Justin Jones, who you saw there in the white suit, who was holding up a fist a second ago. They are now proceeding to House Resolution 64 to expel State Representative Gloria Johnson. There you see a State Representative, ex-State Representative Jones speaking to reporters there. Ryan Young, it is shocking, as you note, the idea that what has motivated a state legislative body in Tennessee a week after this horrible attack on a Christian school, where a disturbed person entered with guns, killed 3 9-year-olds, killed 3 faculty and staff members before police officers, law enforcement from the Memphis area bravely charged in and killed the shooter. That what has actually prompted action is the fact that 3 State House Democrats were unruly on the floor of the State House. And look, obviously they violated the rules. Obviously they were disruptive and unruly. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be punished, but it is just stark. You see, I believe that is Gloria Johnson there on the left, State Representative Gloria Johnson, a Democrat. The action that they're taking right now is to disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of Tennesseans who will now not have state representation in the State House. That's a former State Representative Jones embracing with soon-to-be former State Representative Gloria Johnson on the floor of the Tennessee State House in Nashville. What is motivating the legislators is this act of civil disobedience, this act of violating legislative decorum, and not the murders of these 3 individuals, 3 students, 9-year-olds at a Christian school in Memphis, or the 3 faculty members, 6 individuals murdered. That is not prompting the state legislature to act. It is these state representatives, these 3 Democrats being rude.
Finally well put by Anderson Cooper. Yeah, it was a little bit of rudeness. The freaking cowards. Just to recap, children are dying. These people actually tried to do something about it. And Tennessee, the rest of your representatives are so committed to letting children be murdered that they got embarrassed and chose to expel these people. That's pathetic. That's a pathetic state you got there. It's a real low place for your state to be, and you should be utterly ashamed. It is partially your fault, as it is partially my fault. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. Tennessee is not separate from the rest of the country's narrative. My fault too. And I'm so damn sorry. It's all of us if you live in the U.S. And again, if you live outside the U.S. and you're watching this program, we're working on it. I'm sorry. So what are we going to do? You want to get yourself together, for God's sake. What do? We do not let this exist in isolation. If it is partially our fault. If you live in Tennessee and this is partially your fault, if you live in the United States and this is partially your fault, take responsibility. Number one, write that man and his colleagues. The VOD will have a link to all of their contact pages. Write them with a message of support. They need it right now. They do. Number two, write your representative. Let's insist that our representatives do some damn work and do some ugly work. They're getting nice paychecks, by the way. For these jobs, they're real nice paychecks. So write yours at the state level as well as the national level. I'll give you a link to all of your representatives. Write them all. You're going to have to write one message, copy it, and then paste it about 4 or 5 times. Write them and tell them that you want them to protest in the exact same way that these lawmakers did. I'm going to do a follow-up video. I do the live stream version. I'm starting to think that it might be better to do somewhat more detailed follow-up videos. And this is important enough that it's making me sort of solidify that line of thought. Let it keep going. I want to watch every inch of this. We should. There is something healthy about allowing yourself to fully feel the shame in a shameful moment. Allowing yourself to face it and stare at the ugliness, and then resolving to do something about it. So let's continue, because we've earned this. Here is a good man being kicked out of his job for trying to do a good thing.
I mean, that is unusual. I would think that, and I'm not talking about gun control, but I would think there would be some action taken to try to figure out how to protect the students and faculty.
Yeah, first things first, Jake, when you think about it, Jones is sharp-tongued, so there's a lot of people that he's tussled with within the State House who I think are sort of happy the fact that they get a chance to take away his seat. We saw today how he was able to defend himself so very well as he was talking back and forth with lawmakers. But a lot of people believe before we even got here today that this was a done deal, that he was going to be gone at the least. And so many people have been trying to change things. But here's the thing, we've been talking to teachers all day long who spent their entire time to come down here, imploring lawmakers, hopefully, to change their mind on this one and maybe focus more on gun legislation. I talked to a Republican woman off camera who said she didn't want to go on camera, but
Wait a minute. Just to be clear what he said. The people who are getting shot to death at random every day around the country, the people that are getting their brains blown out en masse, they came and they politely asked their legislature. Actually, I don't know if they politely did, and I don't care if it was polite. They came and they requested that their legislature not kick out one of the few who's advocating that they get to live. That's what they did. And Tennessee, your representatives chose to ignore them. That's who you have representing you. Is that an accurate representation of your beliefs? To ignore your fellow Americans that are getting murdered, who've come and asked that your representatives stop that from happening. Is that an accurate representation of your beliefs? If not, 2024 is coming up quick. And maybe keep that in mind.
She said the whole idea here, look, we live in the South. I don't expect them to take away our guns, but she wanted to see something change to make school kids safe. And so we heard that over and over from people saying maybe the Republican, Democratic talking points needed to go away just a little bit in order to make some sort of space here to help children out. We had teachers crying on air with us today, begging for change because they don't know what to tell their students, because they say their own students expect for something to happen.
For the record, he said Republican and Democratic talking points need to go away. No, just Republican talking points. Credit where it's due. At all times. That doesn't just mean your old pal Jake lets something go, or your old pal Jake says, credit where it's due, I'm going to say something nice about this Republican. It also means, with bullshit like that, we clarify. Republican talking points need to go away in this conversation. Republicans are 100% guilty in allowing these children to die, allowing teachers to die. That's a Republican problem. What the Democrats are guilty of is only not fighting them hard enough. So no, not talking points from both sides need to go away. No. Democrat talking points need to get harsher, louder, and more frequent. In fact, I would say constant. Republican talking points need to go away. This is fair. Just because one side is insane and is acting like it does not mean the other side needs to take equal concessions. They're already acting sane. So don't both sides this with that nonsense.
Happen in school now. It's that sad fear that we should be dealing with front and center, according to the protesters who came here. And then you have this action taking place, a change in state history, really, when you think about how this is going to move forward. And of course, with that Republican supermajority, they make the rules. And so these three lawmakers pretty much challenge that rule governing body, and decorum is going to win out in this one in terms of them being able to make this change. Now, you hear people on the floor right now saying this is a change for America and democracy, and that's something that we're going to think about moving forward.
Holly, what is your reaction to what we're seeing here on the side, on one side of the screen? On the left, you see State Representative Justin Jones in his white suit holding up his fist. He was there for a second outside the chamber. He has been ejected. He has been expelled from the state legislature for the unruly behavior from last week. And we see on the right side of the screen State Representative Gloria Johnson, who is about to be expelled. Holly, are you surprised that this is what the state legislature is choosing to act on, even though 6 innocent people were murdered in a Tennessee school, in a Christian school, and that would seem to me, just as a citizen, to be more offensive than the rude behavior we saw?
No, I'm a native Tennessean, and I'm sadly not. This is not a surprise to me. It's very upsetting to me as a Tennessean. What this is about is the fact that the Republican supermajority has never liked Gloria Johnson. They don't like Justin Jones, and they don't like Justin Pearson.
I just want to highlight that lady has the right idea. She said, this is upsetting to me as a Tennessean. Good. Good. It should be. Even on a network like CNN, occasionally you get somebody with some freaking principles, which we desperately need a return to. I don't think we ever actually had them in the U.S. We need to invent some and then follow them. Yeah, you should feel personal shame. And in this case, honest to God, we all should. Remember, and we're going to talk about this in detail in 2 minutes and 23 seconds. Remember, one of the reasons Republicans act like this is to make a dark parallel to other things that have happened in politics so that the people that normally vote for them can say it's all just performance. So remember, Marjorie Taylor Greene was kicked off committees, for example, for acting like a GD traitor. We need to make this not look the same on the surface. And the way to do that is to make sure we don't react the same way that Republicans reacted. MAGA made it into a big deal. Traditional Republicans did nothing. That means progressives need to make this into a big deal, and we need to make sure our cowardly centrists get poked, prodded, shoved, screamed at, harassed, hollered at, generally made uncomfortable until they get on board. And yes, let me underline that rather than walk it back. Harassed every moment of their lives. Not illegally. No threats. But made uncomfortable. Called a coward. Called lazy. Called useless. Until they join in solidarity with that guy and his two pals. We need to make this into a big event. We're going to come back to this again and again and again. We need to make this into a big event. This is what 2024 is going to be all about. We need to make the difference clear. On school shootings, Republicans are on the side of the killers, and Democrats are on the side of the children.
And this has given them an opportunity to take some action and to take revenge on them for speaking up.
Let's listen.
Tennessee's got some of the laxest gun laws.
Yeah, let's just listen into State Representative Jones, or former State Representative Jones. Let's listen to him.
I think I love it.
Let's support the others who are still in there.
That is a leader, ladies and gentlemen. Tennessee, I hope you'll have him back in 24.
And this does not seem like America. To expel voices of opposition and dissent is a signal of authoritarianism, and it is very dangerous. And I hope that as a nation watches, that we put this light on Tennessee to say that this should sound the alarm across the nation that we're entering into very dangerous territory.
You have two of your colleagues in there who are still going to face questions today. What would you say to them, your other two members of the Tennessee Three?
I mean, we're in this together. The three of us, the Tennessee Three, we stand together. So I'm going to the balcony to go support them. I can't be on the House floor right now, so I'm going to go to the gallery and stay for the hearing because we are in this together. And it's so important that we represent. We're multiracial, intergenerational. We represent Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville. We stand united, and the people across the nation are paying attention to what's happening because this is not the end. But what they did was signal that if we don't act, we will lose our democracy. Today was a signal that we have lost democracy in Tennessee and that we are on the path toward authoritarianism, to be quite honest.
Will you run again?
I have no idea, what are my next steps in terms of responding to this extreme measure, but I will continue to show up with the people and continue to demand action on common sense gun laws, because what we were saying was let us pass an assault weapons ban, let's take action, and they responded by assaulting democracy. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Representative Jones.
I don't have any next steps, but I will continue to show up in this Capitol with these young people, whether I'm in that chamber or outside. And so we don't know what's next. I'm going to consult my legal team because I believe that what they did was unconstitutional. I believe that it violated, many of our rights. And so it silenced, more importantly than just me, my district. 78,000 people have lost their vote and their voice because of the extreme actions of this body. And so I'll continue to show up, and we must continue to hold them accountable.
Shameful. Absolutely shameful. I know one of our folks is a Tennessean, and I am just so sorry. I think that's is that wireless mic? It is wireless mic. I'm sorry this happened, sir. Good news. Hopefully, the rest of the Wicked community is going to help you out by contacting their representatives. Mike, the one thing you can do, you've done. Put good people in your state's legislative bodies. Keep doing it. Tell your friends and family about this and about why it happened. Make sure other Tennessee voters know and own the fact that if they dare vote red in 2024, they're voting for children to die. That's what they're doing. Make sure they know that, because that is reality. The rest of us, link in the description. Refresh the page if you don't see it. Under the notes, the show notes for this story, contact your representatives. Want to know what to do? I'll tell you right now. Tell them you want them to protest this. To protest it. Tell them you want them to speak out against this. Tell them you want some GD hay made of this. We are going to show the world now, including ourselves, if this is who we are. And it becomes who we are as opposed to an unfortunate occurrence in bad times. It becomes just who we are if we accept it. Don't accept it. We're better than that. Contact your representatives. Link in the description. Let's read some comments. Granny P, how is this even legal? What about the citizens that elected them? Yeah, I think you should be able to expel a member of any body under the right conditions. I think if they're acting in bad faith, etc., etc., and obviously these are not those conditions. This is corruption. Corruption is essentially, I think it's the perfect word for this, but maybe I'm wrong. Leon Chevalier says, from the UK, this nonsense is like watching aliens landing. Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'll say this. Here's something you can do if you're from outside of America and you want to help us out. And by the way, we appreciate the help quite a bit. I talk to other Americans, and they are frequently about this specifically, and they are always shocked by the reality when I tell them that on the world stage, Democrats are center-right. I have 5 sisters, so I'm not outing anybody here. One of my sisters, who is they follow the news. They're a pretty informed person. Their jaw dropped when I said that Democrats are center-right. Because in their mind, Democrats are the lefties, right? The hippies. So here's something you can do. Make sure when you pop into the comments on a probably American-leaning video, you bring this stuff up. Bring up the fact that Democrats are center-right. And in fact, the U.S. is a right-wing authoritarian-leaning country. Make them aware of that. Make us aware of the fact that you don't experience school massacres like this. That if somebody came into an English school with an assault rifle and shot up a room full of kids, that would be a national tragedy that was taken seriously, and that only America chooses to let this keep happening. Tell us what we are in the comments section around the internet. It will have a bigger effect than you may realize. Patrick Thibodeau, they expelled the other Justin too. They spared the They expelled the other Justin too. They spared the white woman. I know, shocking, he says. This becomes who we are if we allow it. Contact the Justins. Tell them you support them. Contact your representatives. Tell them you expect them out dealing with this. Rob Cherry, it's a little on the nose who did and did not get kicked out. Yeah. Laura, sorry, Jake, I'm not feeling guilty. My first election, I voted for Anderson. I've been swimming against the stream all my life. You guys are catching up. No offense. Just saying. Fair enough. Your hands are clean if you have voted against this your whole life. You still have a responsibility to advocate. Whatever we have done has not been enough. I voted against this. I don't live in that state, but I have voted every time I could for people against this mentality. I have marched in protests at the risk of my career. I took up a career to inform people. I've literally dedicated my life to this. And I'll tell you, you may feel that you can wash your hands of the guilt entirely. But I don't for myself. Because whatever I did was not enough. Definitionally, whatever all of us did was not enough. And children are still dead. So if you feel, okay, well, you voted correctly, fair enough. There's an argument to be made there. Keep voting the way you vote. Do what you got to do to keep your energy up. And bear in mind that whatever we're doing collectively, more needs to be done. So do more if you can. Franny P. They are not embarrassed. Yeah. Leon Chevalier says it's not your fault. No, it is. It is our fault. I don't care if you feel like you're a good guy. We all live in a country where children are allowed to be killed. It is our fault. And we have to accept that. Like grown-ups who take responsibility for the safety of the children in their community. If we have a system where we feel polite conversation is exchanged and we eventually arrive at the right decision, well, it's taking us so long to arrive at the right decision that children are dying. It is, look at me, it is our fault. Exist in this moment for just a second. It is our fault. Hey, dorks, happy Thursday, says Mark L. Madison. Well, hey there, Mark. Sorry I read that in a low moment. Wicked Foxy Dragon. How can they take out someone the people voted in? Them's the rules. Mark L. Madison says, the precedent this sets, that's it. Allowable. It's going to have massive implications for any duly elected Democratic leader until they get bored and stop doing it so publicly. Yeah. Yep. That's it. Exactly. Look, good news is we don't have to do all the hard work. Theoretically, you've elected people who you can send out to go do the hard work for you. That's why they get those nice paychecks. I'm not saying we have to whip ourselves. I'm just saying we got to write an email. That's all. To the people who we employ to do this shit. Laura, advocating. That's why I'm here. Wicked is the way. Oh, thank you so much, Laura. Yes. Yeah, advocating. Advocate to your representative. You don't even have to go out and protest. Tell your representative to go out and protest. You can stay home. All of us can stay home and enjoy a nice bowl of soup. We just have to say, hey, person who draws a $100,000 plus paycheck from my taxes, get your butt out there and deal with this. Oh, mercy me. Well, let's have a look at some fantastic reporting. I need a palate cleanser. And if you want to know why, for example, the Second Amendment, which guarantees in this country the right to a well-regulated militia, a.k.a. a military force. If you want to know why that's interpreted to mean that a psychopath can walk around town with a weapon of war, terrifying everybody, and there's not a damn thing police can do about it, well, the Supreme Court has a whole lot to do with that and corruption therein. The corruption in this new era of people being interested in politics, ooh, and it's a good era, that's being exposed. And by the way, a lot of this ugliness that we're seeing so close right now is only because, I mean, it existed before, and we're just now paying attention to it. So we're going to see more ugliness like this. Just prepare yourself. We're going to see a lot more as these shallow graves are dug up and we look at the crimes that we've been allowing to happen. But in this new era of interest, people are looking closer. Some local reporting reflected and boosted by Midas Touch that I really want to highlight to you guys. And I know we do Midas Touch nearly every day. I'm probably going to take a Midas break in a moment, but this one was too good to let go. Hopefully you'll consider Midas Touch as well. Here we go.
I'm Ben Meiselas from the Midas Touch Network. A bombshell report has just dropped by ProPublica, which shows that the right-wing extremist Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who's been responsible for some of the most horrific decisions taking away the rights of Americans, and particularly the
Correction here. Okay, never mind. Not local reporting. I thought it was. I thought the person who did the digging here was a local station. But oh well, ProPublica it is.
Right of a woman to control her body, that Justice Thomas has been receiving millions of dollars in lavish gifts from a far right-wing millionaire donor named Harlan Crow, which Clarence Thomas was not reporting on his judicial disclosure forms as he was required to do by law. In other words, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, the right-wing extremist judge, has been engaged in a more than 2-decade-long crime scheme of receiving these lavish gifts, in addition to engaging in horrific and heinous unethical conduct. And so this ProPublica article begins by talking about a trip that Justice Thomas took in 2019 where he went island hopping with Harlan Crow in Indonesia. And there are photographs. I mean, ProPublica has got its receipts. And the way ProPublica did this incredible research, since Justice Clarence Thomas did not disclose it as he was required to do by law, they got records from the Secret Service, because when the Secret Service travels, those records are public when they travel with him. They got records.
I do have to just say, just take a moment, and yes, this is corruption, and yes, there's all kinds of problems we're going to have to deal with, but I do want to just say, this is the kind of corruption that warms my heart. Did Clarence Thomas do awful things? Yes. Is Clarence Thomas in a second or in a 2 or 3 degrees of separation way responsible for the deaths of Americans, I'm sure. But I do have to say, it's nice that this is not a bribe to cover up an affair he had while his wife was pregnant. It's nice that this is not a secret family living in a I don't know, a cheap hotel somewhere that he's trying to keep off the records. No, he's taking vacations. He's walking around in Bermuda shorts, feeling the sand between his toesies. Okay. This is, I mean, we got to punish it. We got to change the way our system works. Yeah, yada, yada, yada. But it's heartwarming. Good old-fashioned traditional corruption. Thank you, Clarence Thomas, for being the right kind of gross.
From the employees at the yacht that transported Clarence Thomas, from the plane manifest. So they pieced this all together, and Harlan Crow even issued a statement, again, denying that influence of any sorts took place. Yeah, right. I'll read you Harlan Crow's statement, but this reporting is firm. So going back to this 2019 trip in Indonesia, just take this one trip, for example. Justice Thomas was taken there in a private jet, a Bombardier Global 5000. He then went on Harlan Crow's yacht to do the island hopping. Here are the photographs of this trip. This trip alone would have cost Clarence Thomas $500,000. So a $500,000 gift alone in just 20.
It may be the right kind of corruption, but there sure is a lot of it. Holy crap.
19 from this Harlan Crow to.
And also, for the record, I'm joking when I say the right kind of corruption. It's just nice that I don't feel like I gotta, I don't know, take a shower after hearing about it. It's just like, oh yeah, I could be bribed by a really nice vacation. I can at least understand how the neurons fire in your brain to say like, oh yeah. No, we definitely shouldn't put that on the financial disclosure. No.
To Justice Clarence Thomas. And then for over 2 decades, Clarence Thomas.
Just realized the reason, I mean, that financial disclosure form, to my understanding, there is basically nothing we can do within the law as it currently exists, and we should change. But there is nothing we can do if he does fill out that financial disclosure form and he says, look at all these vacations I take, other than politely request, but not insist upon, request that Clarence Thomas not rule in cases involving that guy. But the reason that form exists is so that the public can see whether or not people are acting corruptly. Justice Thomas, for the record, as cutesy as I'm being with him in this segment, he is supremely corrupt. If you don't recall, he ruled on a case that directly affected his wife. And he was the only person who ruled against the disclosure of certain January 6th texts, which it turns out Ginny Thomas was a part of. Who's the only one that ruled against turning over those texts? Clarence Thomas. He's corrupt. I'm being cute about him right now, but it's a serious problem.
Has essentially had a luxury lifestyle subsidized by this right-wing donor, Harlan Crow. For example, ProPublica points out that they went to Bohemian Grove together, which is described as an exclusive all-male retreat in California. They would travel to Harlan Crow's East Texas ranch. Every single summer, Clarence Thomas would stay for over a week.
God damn it. It's so hard to stay mad at him. Look how happy he is. It's so hard to stay mad at him. Let me see if what the Wicked community has to say about this. See, we can't even take action like boycotts against these kinds of people, says Zix. I don't buy or build strip malls myself. Yeah, I know. Wireless Mike, quoting some reporting on Crow here. Crow, a Dallas resident, is the chairman of the board of Crow Holdings, a private family business established to manage the capital of the Trammell Crow family, according to the firm's website. Trammell Crow is a Harlan. Is Harlan. I have to say, I do love their names. Trammell Crow is Harlan Crow's father, who became one of America's largest real estate developers and landlords. Trammell Crow passed away in 2009, a favor to the world. Yeah. Noted. Thank you. Also, how interesting is it that real estate tycoons keep coming up in American scandals? Obviously Donald Trump, obviously Harlan Crow, because we're talking about him right now, but also like in California with their water sources, that the big scandals over that's what Chinatown was based around, the actual real scandals, not the thing with the kid and all that and the nose, but the water scandals. Currently Arizona as well, same thing. Real estate folks seem to be prone to these types of corruption scandals. I don't know if that's just coincidence or what, but it's interesting. Anyway, let's keep hearing this because, believe it or not, it does get worse. I'm just going to drink in that happy image of Thomas one more time. God, I wish he was a good person. I really wish he was a good person because I want to like him when I see pictures of him looking like somebody's grandpa like that. I want to like him, but I really don't.
And sometimes weeks at a private resort for free owned by Harlan Crow in the Adirondacks in New York, something called Camp Topridge. And look, there's even a painting when you go into Camp Topridge. And look who's in that painting. That is Justice Clarence Thomas. That is Harlan Crow. Who else is in that painting? Oh, that's Leonard Leo, the main donor and the leader of the Federalist Society, is in that photo.
If you don't know, the Federalist Society is it's an organization that makes things like MAGA possible. They are, when you have MAGA people coming up with conspiracies about secret elites controlling things, what they're actually describing is what the Federal Society is in reality. And like all of these wacky conspiracies, the reality is simply too boring to make a good conspiracy out of. Functionally, it operates the same way. They come up with legislation, they pitch it to lawmakers, and they're friends with lawmakers, and they themselves are often lawmakers. And so they get their wacky legislation passed. They play around with American government. But there's not a secret pact with like a blood sacrifice or anything that makes for a really juicy creepy pasta that you can share around the internet. It's just rich assholes who are ultra conservative. That's it.
Oh, who else is in that photo? Oh, is that Mark Paoletta in the photo? Yeah, that's Mark Paoletta, who was the former general counsel for the Office of Budget Management, Office of Management and Budget within the Trump administration. And Pauletta's basically served as the PR flack, if you will, for Clarence Thomas and for the Supreme Court, saying that the Supreme Court should be immunized from any ethics rules and from further ethics disclosures, that they should have their own rules in and of themselves without any further oversight being conducted of them. How ironic that Paoletta is in that photo. Folks, the corruption here runs deep. It runs deep. Look, from an ethical standpoint, federal judges are guided by ethical rules which say even the appearance of impropriety would be unethical if you continue to be on a case where there's an appearance of impropriety. Taking gifts would be an appearance of impropriety that would taint your judicial temperament and your ability to render objective decisions. But guess what? Those ethical rules, they don't apply to the Supreme Court. Why? Because the right-wing Supreme Court justices, led by John Roberts, don't want them to apply to them.
Ooh.
However,
I almost had the guts to try to correct Knock 'em Out Pete, but yes, I'm glad he said that. So just for the record, just to underline what he said, it would be unethical. It, in fact, is unethical by our legal definitions of what is unethical. However, the rules are such that that isn't actionable in any way. And we can change that, by the way, if we get blue enough in 2024. And speaking of getting blue, I just want to remind you to tune in this Saturday, which is going to be an extraordinarily immature stream. And there are jokes aplenty to be made about Clarence Thomas. None of them are probably what you think. It's just a funny thing with the name Ginny that I found we can do. Anyway, if you watch the Venture Brothers, I steal clips from the Venture Brothers. Anyway, I'm desperate to I just want to take a time machine to November of 2024. Problem is, we can't, it's not as simple as waiting for that. Because unfortunately, we have a lot of work to do to get us the right November 2024. But let me tell you, the task is very doable. Unlike the last two elections, there's not really an element of mystery. By now, we know enough about what's going on to know exactly what we have to do and to know ahead of time whether or not we will have done it successfully. And if we do it, then on November of 2024, I cannot wait for the stream where we are watching Fox and we are watching the reactions from right-wingers around the country and we're watching eyes widen and jaws drop as they realize the storm that they are going to endure and be, in fact, drowned by. The comeuppance that is coming their way, if we are successful, if we do our jobs, is going to be glorious. Let's let Knock 'em Out Pete keep going.
However, there is still criminal law that would apply, and you can't make false statements on federal disclosure. So let's pull up the disclosure, for example. So here's a disclosure in 2017 when Justice Thomas would have received lots of gifts from this right-wing donor, Harlan Crow. If you go to the gifts section, you'll see, oh, look, there's no gifts report. And that's the same thing that you will basically see each and every year, that Justice Thomas did not disclose any of these gifts. And we're talking about millions and millions of dollars. Like I showed you, in 2019 alone, 500,000 on that one trip. And then there's plane records and Secret Service records, which indicate that this Bombardier 5000, this private jet by Harlan Crow, would just like pick Justice Thomas up for day trips. They'd pick him up at Dulles Airport and they'd bring him even for short trips. Like there was one instance that the article mentions, there was a trip to New Haven, Connecticut, a 3-hour trip. I mean, he could have just taken public transportation. He could have taken a train there like most people do. No, but he took a private jet. That trip alone, using that jet from publicly available data, just that one trip, was a gift of $70,000 that Justice Thomas did not disclose. And he would regularly take that trip. He'd regularly take those gifts to go on trips. So, he wanted to be there for the swearing-in ceremony of one of those Trump judges when Trump was in office. Call up Harlan Crow, take that Bombardier 5000, and you would see the patterns of the flight patterns. Go to Dulles. It would go to, Dallas, for example, for a swearing-in ceremony, and then it would go back to Dulles, essentially in the same day. And folks, we're talking about $70,000, $100,000 for each of these private jet trips. So, and the article describes how Justice Thomas has always tried to, I'm just a humble guy. I'm just very, very humble. Justice.
For the record, what he always tries to do, I totally fall for. I mean, I don't actually believe what he's saying when he's like, I'm a humble guy, yada, yada, yada. I want to believe it so much that I feel myself sympathizing. Can't do that, though, because we have an opportunity. As we said earlier, there's nothing we can do about the ethics violations. But here's a fun little fact. There's plenty we can do about the failure to self-report the ethics violations. We have such weak controls over our justices that it's almost as though we have no controls over them. But the funny thing is, we've let them get away with murder for so long that even those weak controls that we have, Thomas has found a way to violate. And there is indeed something we can do. And by the way, it might boot Justice Thomas TF out of the Supreme Court, which would give Biden a chance to put a justice on it. And we're going to get a right-winger if he does, God help us. But they won't be a maniac. And that is an improvement. Let's let him keep going, though, talking about how Clarence Thomas tries to relate to the everyman. And I admit, it works on me, even if Thomas's version of an everyman is a cartoon. I'm a cartoon, so.
Thomas would say, this was an actual quote from Justice Thomas, not in response to this article. Justice Thomas didn't respond. But Thomas previously had said things like, I don't have any problem with going to Europe, but I prefer the good old United States. Seeing the regular parts. I prefer RV parks and Walmart parking lots to beaches and things like that. I don't really like beaches and things like that. There's something normal about it. I come from regular stock. I prefer being around it. One of the great things that ProPublica also did in its report is they found these photographs of Clarence Thomas where every time they would go on these trips with Harlan Crow, these luxurious, elaborate trips where they would stay on this super yacht with staff and private chefs. It was so elaborate that Harlan Crow would make like polo shirts commemorating each of the trips. So there would be like a shirt that had the yacht on it, and by the yacht was called the Michaela yacht. And then each of these polo shirts would have like the year of the trip. So it'd be like 2019 Indonesia.
Okay. If you're familiar with Adam Reed, he's the guy that he does Archer, that comedy cartoon. He did C-Lab 2021. He did Frisky Dingo. If you haven't seen these cartoons, you should. They are amazing. And funny enough, Frisky Dingo, which came out in the early 2010s, maybe even before then, I'll have to look it up. But it basically tells the story of the 2016 presidential election, almost a decade ahead of time. It's bizarre how good this guy is. But this is the kind of joke Adam Reed would make. A flashback to a corrupt trip that people took, a montage of corrupt trips, and he's got a T-shirt on and a big dumb smile at every location as he's just shattering the law, or just shattering ethics violations, doing ethics violations here and there and there and there. Every single one, a massive chunk of corruption, and he's got a shirt like, oh God. And of course, oh sure, the other guy's got an Oxford University shirt. Perfect. Hey, MAGA folks, when you talk about the elites not taking us seriously, not giving a damn about us, mocking us, let me tell you, I'm somebody who genuinely does feel more comfortable in a Walmart parking lot than on a European vacation. I say this having gone on 2 European vacations in my life, only one of which I had to pay for out of my own pocket because I mooched. So I at least can sympathize that much. And in both European vacations, basically all I did was argue with waiters. So you're talking to someone who you were targeting, is my point, Justice Thomas. And I don't see you there. I don't see somebody who hangs out with, who's got special embroidered shirts from their vacations every vacation. I don't see those folks there. I don't see folks with Oxford University shirts there, largely speaking. It's just right-wingers, MAGA folks. The people you suspected were there, and the things you suspected they were doing. You're just slightly off. That's the maddening thing. You're just a little bit off. It is one of the major parties. Okay, fine. It's both of the major parties, but it's mostly your guys. It's mostly your team that doesn't give about the rules and really doesn't give anything resembling about you. But otherwise, and yeah, there's no blood magic or whatever. But otherwise, I mean, you got it. Yes, group of elites stealing from the American people for their own benefit. You're so close. You're so close. Just be willing to admit that your targeting MAGA folks was slightly off. And suddenly you'll actually be able to have your storm, your big day where you go get them all. It's just that much like your targeting was slightly off, your solution was also slightly off. No hang Mike Pence. No gallows constructed. None of that. I propose to you, MAGA folks, that we do something much more devastating, which is subject them to the same system we have had to answer to that they haven't before. And that system is the criminal justice system. We also take away their privileges and watch these big babies suffer because they are unable to exist in the world we exist in, the real world. They can't deal with it. They don't have the life skills. They don't have the business skills. They don't have the ability to exist under the rules we have to live under. So if we put in rules that say you got to act like us or you suffer the same consequences we would if we did this kind of stuff, you will find a delicious satisfaction in watching them melt like butter on a pan under the pressure of being treated like regular folks. Turn it over. Give it some thought. You may enjoy how wonderfully that plays out.
2007, the Greek islands. And he wear those shirts out and about. And so ProPublica, here, pull up this one. I think this one is the Greek islands from 2007. So ProPublica was able to find the different shirts that he was wearing, where you can see the yacht on the shirt if you zoom in, and you see all of the trips that he went on there. Yeah, and they got the photographic proof, like we showed you. Here are the photos from Indonesia. You have the painting at Top Ridge, the exclusive camp in the Adirondacks, where every summer Clarence Thomas would be at, and so much more. Let me read you though right now. This is the statement by Harlan Crow. Harlan Crow says, in response to this article, my wife Kathy and I, we've been friends with Justice Thomas and his wife Ginny since 1996. We're very dear friends. The hospitality we have extended to the Thomases over the years is no different from the hospitality we have extended to our many other dear friends. We have been most fortunate to have a great life of many friends and financial success, and we have always placed a priority on spending time with our family and friends.
Let's just take that as the most innocent version. Let's pretend like their other dear friends are not also powerful people that they expect favors in return for. Let's just take the most innocent version of that and translate it. I've made so much money that I don't need to live, that I can afford to pay for $500,000 vacations as a little treat for my friends, the people I like. And I can do that since 1990, whatever the hell. I've been able to do that for 30 years. That's how much money I have. Can his employees take those kinds of vacations? No. Can they afford to take even one of those vacations for themselves and their families? No. Do the people that clean those properties take those kinds of vacations? No. Will they ever? No. Does the person who does maintenance on those property take those kinds of vacations? No. Will they ever? No. Will they ever be able to treat their friends? Hell no. Even the most innocent version of this shows the corruption. I'm fine with the boss being richer than the employees. Fine. Okay. That much richer? That much richer for what this guy does. This guy didn't invent the microchip. This guy, he owns some properties. He's a landowner. He's a successful landowner. Great. But his daddy did the real business. His daddy made him rich. He's just had to maintain that. In other words, he gets to be aristocracy. Oh, my friends and I constantly take these trips. This is not an unusual way for us to conduct ourselves. Oh, good for you. I'm delighted that you got the long, very long end of the American stick. As it feels like we got stuck. Jesus Christ.
Justice Thomas and Ginny never asked for any of this hospitality. We have never asked about a pending lower court case, and Justice Thomas has never discussed one. And we have never sought to influence Justice Thomas on any legal or political issue. More generally, I am unaware of any of our friends ever lobbying or seeking to influence Justice Thomas on any case, and I would never invite anyone who I believe had any intention of doing that. These are gatherings of friends. Oh, gatherings of friends. I call BS because on a 2017, well, I call BS in general, but I'll give you just an example from ProPublica. In a 2017 trip where Thomas went to Camp Top Ridge in the Adirondacks, there were executives from Verizon, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and the right-wing GOP think tank American Enterprise Institute was there. Not to mention there is a freaking painting of Leonard Leo, the leader of the Federal
American Enterprise Institute, the Federalist Society. Remember, it's no different than what's happening in the Tennessee State House. Right-wingers, it's not new with MAGA. Right-wingers use real things to rile up their base, and they skew it just a little bit, just as much as they have to make the others, whoever they may be, look like the ones who are doing it. Or at the very least, to make it look like the corruption is universal and that you can just ignore when right-wingers do it, right? But again, Federalist Society, yada, yada, yada. What was that other group? What was that other group he just said? There's so many of them.
PricewaterhouseCoopers and the right-wing GOP think tank American Enterprise Institute was there.
So these think tanks, American Enterprise Institute, it's really no different than what the Federalist Society does. Again, it's the skewing of reality. This is a group of elites. And they do get together and make secret plans. And again, it's just skewed slightly. Those secret plans are not, they are nefarious, but they're not interesting. It's just tax us less. It's just put the pressure on these people or those people. It ends up being boring stuff that kills people. Like not regulating the lead in gasolines or not being honest about global warming. And there is corruption in just hanging out together, these people. There's corruption there. Now these people, to Justice Thomas, are just my pals. I wouldn't want to rule against my pals. You don't have to say something specific. I'm positive that they did talk about specific things. I am sure that the worst case scenario we can imagine happened. But we don't have to prove that. That's not the point. The point is that on its face, this is corruption. You don't need to turn over the rock to see if a murder happened. You see the body, and there's a rock on some smashed gore where the head should be. On its face, we can see this is not good. This is not a good thing. Good God.
Not to mention, there is a freaking painting of Leonard Leo, the leader of the Federalist Society, and Mark Paoletta, who is trying to insulate the Supreme Court from making further ethical disclosures and financial disclosures. There's a painting of them on the wall when you go into Camp Topridge. So completely and utterly insane. And none of that was disclosed. And you may remember some of our other reporting here on the Midas Touch Network. Do you remember there was a Supreme Court whistleblower named Reverend Rob Schenck, and for over 2 decades he ran what's called Faith and Action, which was a very far right-wing group that was, anti-abortion, criminalizing a woman's right to control her body, and pushed the Supreme Court, one of the major groups pushing the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. Well, Reverend Rob Schenck became a whistleblower and basically felt bad that he had done what he did. And so he spoke before the Judiciary Committee before the right-wing Republicans started holding their hearings. This was when the Democrats were fully in control. Before the right-wing Republicans started holding hearings on Hunter Biden's nude photographs on his laptops. Do you remember what Reverend Rob Schenck said? I'll show you just a brief portion of the report we did on Reverend Rob Schenck from Faith in Action, talking about how he would influence Supreme Court justices like Justice Alito, for example, to make decisions that would be favorable to right-wing causes, and then how he says that even some of the very wealthy donors would get first looks, would get insights into what the rulings were going to be before they took place. Here, play this clip of the testimony of Reverend Rob Shank. Play it.
Higher court involved my recruitment of wealthy donors as stealth missionaries who befriended justices that shared our conservative social and religious sensibilities. In this way, I aimed to show these justices that Americans supported them and thanked God for their presence on the court and the opinions they rendered. Our overarching goals were to gain insights into the conservative justices' thinking and to shore up their resolve to render solid, unapologetic opinions, particularly against abortion. I called this our ministry of emboldenment.
So there you have it, folks. Let me be very clear. The lawlessness of Justice Clarence Thomas knows no bounds, okay? And I don't want to sugarcoat this. You know, here at the Midas Touch Network, we say it like it is, right? There is no BS. You know, we're not just trying to sugarcoat things. Justice Clarence Thomas is a criminal. He's a criminal. He had a legal obligation to disclose these gifts. By law, he had to disclose them. You see the forms. You can't lie on federal forms. He did not disclose them. That means he is a criminal. Not merely unethical, very unethical person, but a criminal. And I want to thank ProPublica for their incredible, incredible reporting here. I'm Ben Meiselas from the Midas Touch Network. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 1.5 million subscribers thanks to your support. So please hit subscribe. Also, check us out at patreon.com.
And we are on the road to 10,000. We are at 2,317 subscribers. Let me tell you, folks, that floors me every time I see it. I am flattered and delighted by that fact. Let's keep it going. Get it to 10,000. I would love to have a wicked community that is robust and that can organize en masse to have some serious effects on how this country runs. You would be shocked by what a handful of people can do. And if we can get to 10,000, ooh, baby, there's a hell of a lot we can do. We're chugging along. Let's do it. Share this. Share this stream with your friends. Like it if you haven't already. Consider giving me that precious, precious subscribe if you would like to be one of the wicked community that kicks ass and changes the world for the better. We will do it. It's going to happen. I'd like you to be there with me. What can we do about this? Well, as good old Knock 'em Out Pete, a.k.a. Ben Meiselas from the Midas Touch Network, said, Thomas broke the law. As we said earlier, there are very few restrictions that Supreme Court justices actually have, but they are required to report that. They are required to report things that could be a conflict of interest that clearly counts. And the evidence is abundant. And ProPublica did the hard work already. Good job, ProPublica. Now, we have to do the kicking in the butt that we had to do with Merrick Garland, for example, that we had to do with our state-level prosecutors, because they weren't interested in pursuing a powerful person. That wasn't American tradition until the people got angry and the people got loud and the people made it clear that they were paying attention. Now, once again, our politicians need to know that we're paying attention, that we see this, that we're no longer in the America that blindly, passively sits around like a bunch of sheep, waiting for the farmer to decide that they've got enough wool and what they need right now is mutton. No, we're not that anymore. Contact your representatives. Say you want Thomas out. Say you want to hear them speaking about this. Make this a big deal. Link in the description. Contact your representatives. In the VOD, I will provide a script. In the live stream, oftentimes, I don't have as much, I guess, what do you call it, bookkeeping? As much of the paperwork, I guess, in place. And I apologize for that. I'll try to get better. But in the VOD, there will be a link in the description. Contact your representative. Use the script if you prefer. But tell them Clarence Thomas has got to go. Does your representative have the power on their own to boot Thomas out? No. But they speak for you in Washington. For this to happen, it needs to be made clear to our leaders that this is something the American people want. So contact your representative and tell them they must go represent you in Washington, and they must talk about this in front of a microphone. Next week, I want to see clips of representatives from all over the country, little-known people making a name for themselves, as they get in front of a mic and say, Clarence Thomas cannot sit on the U.S. Supreme Court. And by the way, I look forward to the a-hole Republicans who say that this is because he's black. I promise you, they're going to try to do that. They are that low. They are that basic in their politics. And I look forward to that because we can then spotlight our first story. We can then say, no, this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like to harass someone in our government and treat them differently because they are black. We got 2 Justins gone in Tennessee because they dared speak out against children being killed in school. The Republicans are so vile that any opportunity they give us to talk about them, anytime they open their mouths, we can say, great, glad you brought that up. Now let me bury you with it. I look forward to it. Contact your representatives. Tell them to speak about this. Thomas, baby, he's got to go. Let's have a look at some of those comments. We have Mars Falcon saying he had a portable meth lab built into the side of his RV, living high on the hog. Clarence, call me Heisenberg Thomas, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, very well. Jim Green says the New York Times reported on the Thomas charade back in 2011. Has anything changed in 12 years? No. And we can take advantage of that. I suggest we do. Yeah. We can point out that he's been a corrupt guy his whole life. His whole life. To him, I'm sure he doesn't even, like in his own soul, see it as corruption. I'm sure he just sees it as the way America works. Let's relieve him of that illusion. We have, however, a little chunk of hope that I saw the other day, and it was brought by my old friend Joy Reid, whose coverage I used to disdain, but has admittedly gotten better and better as time has gone on. Yeah, she'll absolutely, at the first possible opportunity, as you guys have pointed out quite correctly, she'll tear into the genuine lefties. Okay, I accept that. I'm not happy about that, but that's a reality. But what she does real good is tear in to the corporate goons and the lazy DOJ when their corruption is obvious. And what I love seeing, and what we're getting to see these days, is for the first time that I'm aware of in U.S. history, for the first time, people are being honest about the fact that there is actually a two-tiered justice system. And people like Merrick Garland, who are extraordinarily influenced by it and by politics in general, where they are sworn not to be, that's not acceptable. And that's being played for your friends and family that only get their news from the networks. Well, here is one of the major networks saying what you and I have been saying for months and months now.
And we begin with defendant Donald J. Trump, back at his Mar-a-Lago home after facing his first taste of the criminal justice system as the first American president to be charged with a crime. And yet, when it came to holding Trump accountable for his crimes against the country, like using his tiny fingers to tip the scales of our federal elections, it was not the Department of Justice that brought these charges, but rather a local prosecutor in the state of New York. And Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg is not alone. In Georgia, Fulton County DA Fani Willis is said to be getting closer to making her decision on whether to charge Trump for his attempts to tamper with the 2020 election. Somehow, it is falling on these two local prosecutors to redeem the soul of America as it pertains to Donald Trump and his willingness to cheat the system to try to win re-election. In doing so, they are bearing the brunt of that heavy lift, the security risk, the risk to their reputations. And they are doing this despite the fact that it is the literal job of our federal government to protect our federal elections. And yes, the DOJ, through its special counsel, is investigating Trump over his mishandling of classified documents and the events surrounding January 6th. But not this. Remember, it was the Southern District of New York that investigated and ultimately convicted Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, in part for violating campaign contribution laws pertaining to this very case at the direction of individual one, a.k.a. Donald Trump. It is not surprising that former Manhattan DA Cy Vance said over the weekend that it was Trump's Department of Justice under Attorney General William Barr that asked his office to stand down in its investigation of.
Just for the record, if you forgot, Cy Vance let Trump's kids go for a separate crime involving real estate fraud. I'm not a fan of Cy Vance, even though I've been hearing some awfully favorable coverage of him. But to be fair, because he is not currently in office, I haven't looked as closely at Cy Vance as some of the other cats that are currently relevant. But I just want to make it clear, this guy, he's old school in the worst ways, which is bending over backwards to not embarrass. To not embarrass, not cause a scene for the rich, but poor people.
The hush money payments at that time. But why is it that when Attorney General Merrick Garland took the reins at the DOJ, that the SDNY didn't continue its investigation?
Thank you.
It speaks to how political the DOJ has become. And when I say political, I do not mean that in a partisan sense, but rather in a sense that they do seem to be acting with the political risks in mind. Because there really was no reason for the Southern District of New York to not pursue this case. Trump was out of office.
Boom.
He was not a candidate, just a U.S.
Boom.
citizen like you or me. The only reason not to pursue it, as I can see it, was some reticence on their part to take on this particular person, to pursue Trump in particular. And it is hard to argue that that would have been the case with any other former politician.
It would be immature of me to say I told you so. So I'll sing it. I told you so. Oh, yes. Yes, sir. Get him, Joy Reid.
And that brings us to where we are today, where it has been left to local prosecutors to pick up the pieces of the case, doing what the DOJ and the SDNY should have done from the start.
Boom.
Joining me now is Andrew Weissman, MSNBC legal analyst, former FBI general counsel, and former senior member of the Mueller probe. Andrew, it is so great to see you in person.
Yes.
So Last night, when we were on our big set and we were all together talking about this case, my good friend Lawrence O'Donnell, the brilliant Lawrence O'Donnell, he brought up a possibility of one reason why the DOJ let it go. And it was that Michael Cohen had refused to do a full proffer of everything he'd ever done in his life, which would be the normal course. Give us all your potential crimes. So he presented that to Michael Cohen's attorney, Lanny Davis. And let me play you Lanny Davis's answer last night on The Last Word.
Let me just dive on in before we hear whatever reasonable sounding thing Lanny Davis has to say. I do not care about the little bumps in the road. With the corruption we saw on display with the Trump White House, any funding Garland needed, he should have requested. If he needed an army of FBI guys interviewing, if he had to divide America into two groups, one group that works for the FBI now, and one group who is getting interviewed by the other group, then that's what we had to do. Literally, we had to do anything that was necessary to investigate these crimes, because the obvious, apparent crimes needed to be investigated for the American people and publicly, keeping us updated as they go, for the American people to have any sort of faith in their government. I keep hearing about people saying, like, well, if this happens now, what do we do when things get intense? These are the times. These are the times our country should be concerned about. This is the test. So literally, I don't care if Lanny Davis is going to make kind of a good point or not. The whole case should not have required the cooperation or not of Michael Cohen, because these were blatant crimes with paper trails. Let's find out what Lanny Davis said about this.
Take a look.
Why did Merrick Garland, is what you're asking me, not proceed? Well, something called January 6th occurred, the inauguration occurred, and Merrick Garland probably made a practical judgment, not necessarily one that I would applaud, not to look back and prosecute Donald Trump, who had just left office. Probably he made the judgment, we have better things to do, but that's the second guess that we all can make about Merrick Garland.
Does that track to you?
No. It doesn't track. I think it's a really important and terrific topic. Everyone knows what happened with Barr. That's easy. You know that you want to talk about politicization. He's just like, you know what, this is my guy, hands off. Just killed the case. I think I want to give one benefit, though, even though it is totally unfair that the states are sort of carrying this burden, as you said, which is, if there were to be a Republican president again, these state charges in Georgia and in Manhattan, they stick because a federal pardon cannot affect them. So,
that's a good one.
Even though that doesn't really.
Thank you, Joy. It was a great point. When we made it months ago, ooh, baby. Yes, it makes Trump immune from a pardon that Biden, it's certainly Biden of 2020. I'm not sure that Biden still feels this way, but Biden would have just been salivating to be able to give. It's a recent phenomenon that people are just criticizing the Nixon pardon. I did not used to hear that in regular discourse. It would be a thing that the crunchiest, leftiest professor would occasionally grumble about at the tail end of a conversation. Now it is, in some cases, the focus of conversation on here. What a disgrace the Nixon pardon was. And now we're seeing folks like Mehdi Hasan talking about the fact that, hey, Bush did some terrible things. In fact, some, crime, and we should treat it as such. Good. Let's just keep it going, because they're saying what I've been desperate for people to be saying on a major network for years. Baby, it's here.
Totally address your issue, which is why was there dereliction of duty? But I'm just saying there's this unintended benefit, which is that if the states are going forward and you have Georgia and New York, they will actually stay.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really, I can't imagine that was the thinking of Merrick Garland, which is we're not going to do this because I want to sort of have the state piece of this. The reason I don't think that it totally tracks is if you look at the Department of Justice and what they were doing on the January 6th case before the actual January 6th committee hearings, there was very little movement in terms of looking at the White House. There was a ton of action with respect to the people who actually attacked the Capitol. But if you look at what Merrick Garland was doing, it's not like that Lanny Davis's point is, oh, well, he was busy looking at the White House in connection with January 6th, so there's only so much they can do. They just, first of all, it's a very large department. They can actually do both.
Multiple things,
And
isn't that a crazy idea? Isn't that crazy idea? To actually suggest that there is nothing stopping you from running both investigations. Isn't that wild? Good Lord. Been watching the networks talking about this kind of thing for now decades. And just wondering, am I crazy? Am I actually a madman? What don't I understand? So often I talk about intelligence and, not feeling like you're dumb. Because I spent, and I see other folks going through the same thing, years thinking I must be missing something. Because to me, it seems like if it looks like somebody did multiple crimes, you ought to have the resources in place that you can investigate both and not say, well, we only have one guy and he can only work for 2 hours a week investigating any given crime. That's wild. Yes. My God, yes. If you feel a chill right now, that's because the Overton window has opened up and justice is breezing on in. Wireless Mike says, personally, I'm glad that it's being done by the state because it's out of bounds for a presidential pardon. Correct. All right, well, let's let this keep going.
They really weren't pursuing Donald Trump in any form until they were sort of, in my view, sort of embarrassed and given cover by the January 6th committee to say, like, what on God's green earth are you doing? And you had many people on the committee who were very angry. The people who were former prosecutors on that committee were all saying, what is happening? Because they'd never seen a situation where Congress was out ahead of the Department of Justice. So I think the best that can be said for Merrick Garland is he was thinking that it will look like we are politicizing the Department of Justice if we do this.
Right.
When your point, which I think is the right one, which is by not doing it, you are actually politicizing the DOJ because you're taking that into account. And I think that the better course is to what we were told when I was trained as a young lawyer is, you know what, do the right thing. And that you'll know in your heart that's the right thing to do. And you know what? People on the left and the right and the middle might criticize you, but that's what comes with the job. And I remember when I was at the FBI, Director Mueller said, you are always going to be criticized no matter what we're doing. So let's just stick to our guns and do the right thing. So I think it was probably the wrong judgment. I do think that Jack Smith now is where he needs to be. And is.
God bless Jack Smith. I did want to read the follow-up to Wireless Mike, saying he's glad that it's being done by the state. Mars Falcon, amen. When folks say prosecuting Trump would be political, they ignore that not indicting for at least a dozen of the blatant crimes he has committed and often bragged about would also be political. Yes. Thank you. Good Lord. Why is it so... I take it back. I was going to say, why is it so difficult for media folks to get this? Because they are rich people surrounded by other rich people. And when they talk about this kind of things, they don't feel the injustice. It takes a lot more for them to feel it. Wicked Foxy Dragon says, yes, you are crazy, but not because of this. Just kidding. Leon Chevalier says, F the New York case. Let Georgia, a red state, go to town on the loser Tangerine. Yeah, I think let Georgia go to town on him, But don't F the New York case. Everything. Every single thing. When they try to let it go, we drag it back into the spotlight and say, no, if you're Merrick Garland, overwhelmed by all this crime you have to investigate, then you shouldn't have accepted the job as the top crime guy in our country. You need to go and let somebody who can wear the big boy pants put them on. Personal opinion. The documents and the accompanying, Mars Falcon, the documents and the accompanying obstruction and the intended retrieval may be the clearest case. Yeah, get them for all of them. And I'm sorry, I missed it. But who said that? Well, somebody said get them for both, and I agree. Do not hold back.
By all accounts, that's going forward. But that time delay, we're all looking at the clock right now. There's going to be an issue because those charges.
I think they watched our 56 for 45 stream when we talked about the 56 crimes this guy's being, or this guy apparently did. Yeah, the clock is ticking. And in fact, half of them, unless they are included in a RICO case, which we have no reason to believe is going on right now, we should have been told, if there is one, so that we can breathe easy and trust that yada yada justice. But look, unless there is a RICO case going on right now, about half of the crimes that Trump appears to have committed, he can't be prosecuted for any longer.
If they are brought, it's not going to be for some time.
That's right.
And we're all going to be sitting there thinking, is there going to be a trial before the election, or is all of this going to be?
Yeah, just real quick. We shouldn't have to worry about that. We shouldn't have to wonder. Boy, we're in a perfectly functioning country, so we're sitting here dealing with, the things a perfectly functioning country has to do. Will somebody that committed massive crimes, including tampering with elections, be punished before the next election? I hope so. Oh boy, and I'm just glad things are working so well. Are we that dumb? We need to fundamentally change this. First, we need to deal with this punk. Next, we need to hold up the fact that this punk was such a problem and instill protections against this very behavior. We need a new bill of protections for Americans. And we are going to campaign for specific ones starting in 2024. Before then, we might even pick some and insist our representatives campaign on those to prevent this nonsense from ever happening again.
Or not at the federal level. Because these were brought too late.
And I think even the appointment of Jack Smith, which to me felt like I need to put some distance, right? Like the DOJ itself, to me, as an outsider looking in, should have had within it the capability of doing this investigation without adding this layer in between. When you add the layer, that means Jack Smith had to get up to speed. I think it was overseas when he was first appointed.
He was.
And so you then have to have him get up to speed on the case. Then you start this investigation, which then delays it. And to your point, we are looking at the possibility that this state trial goes in January, right? As the Iowa caucuses are happening, right? As New Hampshire is happening. And that in between now and then, Trump could have already been, in the E. Jean Carroll case. You could have witnesses on the stand for that. You could have the Georgia case coming. It's like, I feel almost as if Garland's DOJ has created a train wreck in trying to prevent politicization.
Yeah, it'll remain to be seen. I'm not sure at the end of the day you could end up in a different situation. Just to play out a sort of a different hypothetical, is you could end up with 4 separate criminal cases, 2 at the state level, 2 at the federal level.
Good.
The Mar-a-Lago case, because it's relatively easy in the sense it's a narrow set of facts, that could actually jump forward quite quickly in terms of when there's an actual trial, and that could happen before an election. But I agree with you. If the issue is holding someone to account, you have somebody president who, while they're in office, the Department of Justice says you can't prosecute the person. Then they leave office. If the Department of Justice says, well, let's just look forward not backward. You have a de facto system, which is the president is never going to be held to account. You know, when the Mueller investigation, we had volume 2 was all about obstruction of justice.
11 counts.
And I was sitting there thinking, well, if you're never going to vindicate that, why have a special counsel in the future?
Yeah.
Because you're basically going to say, you know what, they can obstruct while they're a president, and there's nothing you can do about it because you can't bring the case. And all you have to do is wait till you're no longer president, because then you're going to look forward.
Yeah.
So
almost word for word what we talked about on this channel but a month ago. You remember when we did a little refresher on the Mueller report and we said, where's the investigation? That's what led in to that big old stream where two streams where we talked about all of the crime that has not been accounted for. Yes, that is the problem, and it has been made apparent. And again, don't let them say I don't give credit where it's due. I have thanked Trump for that. I'm going to thank Donald Trump again. Thank you, Donald Trump, for exposing how corrupt the United States is. Because this was true before as well. There were paper investigations, like, you know, Potemkin investigations into politicians. And that logic was always used. Oh, well, we can't indict while he's in office. Gets out of office. We want... Wait. What's Obama? I'm Barack Obama. Yeah. We're going to look forward. We're going to be moving forward. We don't want to make my administration about rehashing the past. George W. Bush made mistakes, but I don't want to focus on that. I want to move us forward and look at drone striking brown people in the future. We've just kept doing this, and America kept falling for it because America, frankly, didn't care, to the horror of the world. Because we had cell phones and fast food. But we can't ignore it anymore. And I'm delighted that the network media is finally covering this the way they ought to. I'm glad that your auntie, who only watches this, if she watches the news at all, is hearing this message. And I truly believe that future generations are going to look back at this time the way we look back at Soviet Russia before the fall of the Berlin Wall. That truly is what we're living in. Hasn't really felt like it. Hasn't been as intrusive to our lives as we imagined it must have been for those others. Those of us who were comfortable, anyway, didn't feel that. But if you were black, getting hunted in the street, if you're a gay person who until recently didn't have the ability to marry their significant other, then you felt it. But the rest of us were kept just comfortable enough that we let them bleed us.
It's a totally good point about the Department of Justice really just needs to bite the bullet.
Thank
and
you.
yes, they'll be criticized.
Sure.
But you know what? That's where you're paid the big bucks.
It's the Nixon Ford situation where you say, you know what, it's too hard for the country, but then it ends up being that you're incentivizing the next lawless president to say, I'm good, I just need to get elected. Let me ask you about Mike Pence. So Mike Pence is not going to fight it. He's going to go ahead and he's going to testify. Significance of that.
So I think that is really important to the January 6th case, one way or the other. If he has something to say that is beneficial to the former president, Jack Smith needs to know it.
Yeah.
You need to understand, is it something that is so exculpatory that you don't bring a case, or is it something that's said that you have an answer to, or...
This cat, I think, and I'll admit I don't have the proof of this, but I'm just going to wildly speculate. This cat, what he did before he went on Joy Reid's show was he looked at my live stream and just wrote down everything we were saying yesterday in the comments and in the mic. And then he used that to go on Joy Reid's show. I'm pretty sure this aired simultaneously, but I choose to believe that anyway.
Conversely, is it something that is inculpatory?
Yeah.
And it may be some of both, but it's something that obviously needs to be ironed out. And I also think one great thing that Jack Smith is doing, and again, this is sort of an unintended consequence of it going from Garland to Jack Smith, is he's not wishy-washy. He's not saying, come on in and let's do an interview, like come on set, we'll just chat.
Right.
This is, you're going in the grand jury and we're going to lock you in a forum where there is a transcript and you're under oath and you can't back out and wiggle. There will be an actual transcript. And I think that is the way you have to do public corruption cases.
Yeah.
There's so many people who don't want to have that. They want to not be tied down, as you know, from interviewing people. So it is really important, and it's great to see that Jack Smith is treating all these people as the way they would treat anyone else and not looking at, gee, because of your prior job, I'm going to treat you differently.
Yeah.
The novel approach, really. Isn't that a wild thing? Treat the leaders like you would treat anybody else. Huh. Well, that is an intriguing and interesting change of pace that we might consider trying. Look at some comments for a moment. Leon Chevalier, I feel for you, America. Thank you. Thank you. Truly, even going back to the Iraq War days, I'll tell you, folks from around the world chiming in and saying, you're not crazy. I do feel for you. I sympathize. You know, just showing love like that, man, it's hugely helpful. I believe, and you know what, I should do the what you can do. So I will. What you can do about this, real quick, let's just nail this down. Don't trust Merrick Garland. He has earned your distrust. Maybe he secretly got a detailed prosecution plan. If that's the case, and if we're looking at this in the future, and we look back, maybe we'll be able to say, and this whole time he was doing one grand case, which encompassed all of it. And he got a conviction that changed the way American presidents behave, and thus made them accountable to the law. Maybe. He's still effed up. Even if all that happens, he's still effed up. Why? Because it required that we have faith. It required we give up our ability to change our minds. We give up our ability to use this information. It required we vote based on assumptions one way or another about the criminality of a president and his administration in the previous round. That's a problem. We already had an election where that happened. People had to vote vote based on whether or not they had assumed guilt. That's bad in both ways. It's bad. It's unfair to the politician who theoretically did the crime, or who theoretically could have done the crime, because people that don't like them are now sure they hate them. It's unfair to the American people. It's unfair to the supporters of the politician who might not support that person if it turns out they did a crime. So no, even if Merrick Garland, it turns out, was just really good at making it look like he wasn't working very hard, when in fact he was working very hard, even if that's the case, it's still not sufficient, and we still have to change things. So don't trust Merrick Garland. And don't trust your state attorney general, but do make demands of your state attorney general. If you are from Arizona, New Mexico, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, or Nevada, contact them. Link is in the description. Contact your attorney general and tell them you expect state investigations to be opened into election fraud, the fake elector plot. It's happening in Michigan. That one's much more quiet, but it's happening in Michigan. It's happening in Georgia. In Michigan, right now, let me give you a little update on that. In Michigan, the fake electors are saying, "Oh, we didn't sign the bad document, or we didn't send the document. We just signed it." They're saying they didn't know what it was going to be used for. This is going to happen in all the state level investigations as they go. And those people are going to point to someone from the White House who told them to sign the document. By the way, these documents all looked very similar. Who drew them up? Who distributed them? These are documents designed to defraud the American people. They are the fake certificates of the electors, even though these people in those 5 states were not the state's electors. They were just con artists pretending to be. Merrick Garland is not going to go after those people. And he's certainly not going to make the effort to get all of them. As I'm fond of saying, he couldn't handle a shot of strawberry schnapps. He certainly can't handle an investigation in 5, count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 states. You can't. So get your attorney general on this. And those fake electors, they are going to point to the people in the White House who gave them the documents, who gave them the instructions, who told them what to do. That's going to include Eastman. That's going to include Giuliani. And that is almost certainly going to include Donald John Trump. Get him. Here's something wild. I don't believe that America or Russia survived World War II. I think a tragedy of the psyche happened after, with Fat Man and Little Boy, America wiped out 2 cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And we saw what Hitler was doing to millions upon millions of people in death camps. I think the people of that time experienced the death of innocence. I think we realized 2 things that terrified us, and I think the whole world, frankly, had this same revelation, just America and the Soviets handled it worse. We realized that we are nothing but intelligent beasts, and that we do beast things sometimes. Just like it's a fact of life. Sometimes evil lions eat the cubs of their now deceased rivals. Just like that happens. Sometimes a human, which is nothing but a mostly hairless ape, sometimes a human will just murder with the power of industry millions. Humans are capable of heartlessly making that decision, and we also realized that we have the ability to kill the world. And I think that just broke us. Russia lost the Cold War the Soviet Union lost the Cold War by dying first. And America just took longer. It's like in a movie, Kurosawa flick, where they've had the fatal blow dealt to them. They just have 2-3 more steps they have to take before falling over. And the old America has to die because it was sick. And we have to rebuild this thing. I don't think we got to rewrite the Constitution. No, we just have to do this wild thing that we've never done before, which is, insist that the laws apply equally to everybody. That's the great change. That's the real death of the old America that has to happen. No more fat cat chomping on a cigar gets to pay $1 million to the right people to dodge the law. No. We have to get serious about how we run the country. That includes dealing with these school massacres. That includes dealing with corrupt officials. That includes, yes, applying the law to our leaders and not having an aristocracy which we allow by being passive to be above the law. We have representatives which we can harass, and we should take advantage of that. Make their lives uncomfortable until they are singing the song you want to hear. They are supposed to represent you. We don't even have to really wait for 2024. We can write the Department of Justice, for example, and tell them the OLC opinion that you are following that allows you to not do your job because of a job title held by somebody else has got to go. The OLC opinion that made it so that we would not investigate Trump or level charges against Trump in office because that wouldn't have been fair. And we did it for Nixon too. No, it's perfectly fair. It's still, in fact, an advantage for that guy who's in office. Crimes is crimes, baby. And if a president finds himself unable to do the job because they are required to be at so many court appearances, well, guess what? That's why we got a replacement as part of the package deal when we elect one of these cats. That person is also involved. They're also in court. Well, we have a whole chain of command. And if we're worried about abuse of that, that's a fine thing to be worried about, and we should watch out for it. But we are currently experiencing the abuse that happens when that feature of a functioning democracy is not present. The ability to hold our leaders accountable. We are currently experiencing and have experienced the downside to failing to insist that our country be a just one. For all of this stuff, everything you've heard tonight, for all of it, I do have a recommendation. Get a folder or a notebook or just a piece of paper and write down these issues in very broad terms. Let me tell you what I used to do before I'd quit a job, because I'm a millennial, aka somebody eyeballing 40 who lived in the gig economy his whole damn life. There would always come a time when I'd say, all right, I got to go for this reason or that. And I would often remember old jobs fondly and wonder, why the hell did I ever leave? And it wouldn't be until a smell hit my nostrils or a sound hit my ears that it brought back a memory, and I'd say, that's right, that's why I left. That was a living hell. So I started doing something. like a week before I'd quit, while I was really thinking about if I was going to quit and move on to something else, I'd start writing down the little things that I knew I'd forget later that had just annoyed me. Coworker chewing with their mouth open. Be like, all right, if I leave here, I will never again have to see, goddamn Rick doing this thing or that thing. Started writing when I went into my pocket, or when I put the debit card in the machine, and it would reject the sale, and I'd have to go back and put some of my groceries back. Write that down. Be like, this is why I'm quitting. Write that down for 2024. This is why we need to get rid of Republicans. For every issue talked about today, Republicans stand in the way of progress. Republicans, it so happens, are also the cause of the individual problems here. But the truly important thing to understand is that if we want to fix this, they have to have no power. Any power we allow Republicans to have will be used to stop us from fixing this. They will stop us entirely if they can. They will slow it down and make it the next generation's problem more likely. Write these down. It can be one sentence each. It can be a couple of words each. But write this stuff down. You will find that it really helps you in a couple of months when somebody asks you who you're going to vote for. Out of the blue, you get asked that. Why are you going to vote? What do you care about? What are your issues? When you get asked by somebody new to politics, perhaps, or somebody considering switching, you'll be able to refer to that list. You want to know, feeling kind of tired, you want to know, should I volunteer my time over this weekend? First of all, I think it gives you energy. It doesn't take energy. It gives you energy to fight this stuff. To suddenly not merely endure, but combat it. That gives you energy. But if you're looking for a little boost to get yourself signed up for one of these causes, read the list that you wrote yourself about why you want a change in 2024. In 2024, we need a blue House, bright blue, a bright blue Senate, and somebody in the White House who can be pushed towards a democratic United States. We've got that in Joe Biden. A second-term Joe Biden, a man who's looking to make a legacy, absolutely. It's going to be a lot easier to push that guy. And by giving him a bright blue House and Senate, we also eliminate excuses. We can do it. In fact, I think we will do it. I think we're going to be successful. And to help us do that, I recommend writing down how you feel about these issues. Oh, God, fascinating. Chat. Leon Chevalier says, my ex-GF, who's non-political, is worried about you folks across the pond. Oh, Jesus. She's right, too. My grandparents were occupied by the Nazis. My grandfather was in Korea. Good Lord. My mother was born under Turkish fire. I know the price. Brother. That's a hard family history, but congratulations to you as proof that they made it through it and contributed positively to the world. Delighted to have you, sir. Patrick Kibido says, I'm 54. I can already make this list. Hell yes. Good. Franny P., I lost my dad in Vietnam, also a Korean War vet. I appreciate his service. I'm sorry it was abused. Leon Chevalier says, thanks for your love. Keep fighting. Hell yes, brother. Yep, we're having, I gotta say, as ugly as some of this stuff has been, we are having a renaissance in the United States. And there's all kinds of people. There's people that are going to put forward all kinds of suggestions for what it is. Your old pal Jake will tell you the headline of all of it. It's that we're interested now. The American populace did not used to follow this. You individually may have, but largely, when there was a vote on a thing, it just, nobody really examined it too closely. Now they do. Because fascism demands attention. And that is, fortunately, it has happened in a country, in a time where there is enough power remaining in the people's hands that we can use it to knock them out. We gonna keep at it, folks. Thank you for joining us tonight. This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. My name's Jake. I'll see you next time.